It's Real Talk, episode 21, Archetypes Examine, Man versus Themselves. On today's show, dancer and instructor Emily Poley helps me review Black Swan. Jimmy the Jucan is back to score his comedic hero in Me, Myself, and Irene. And MMAfighting.com's Jose Youngs makes his promotional debut to grade Fight Club. Now quick, leave a like and subscribe before you lose yourself in yourself.
Real Talk is powered by Real Digital. If you work for a brand or agency producing content, keep it real by setting up a consultation at www.realdigital.media to see how your next campaign can come in ahead of schedule and under budget.
In 2010, Darren Aronofsky boldly adapted perhaps the most famous ballet of all time, Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, into a sexually charged body horror that becomes a sort of method acting metaphor about perfection and at least a dozen other themes. What I found most unique about the story was its ability to provocatively explore how a person can feel completely abandoned and alone while simultaneously being the center of attention. Natalie Portman's Nina Sayers is a young dancer who can only gain control of her surroundings by becoming what others want her to be, and when she does achieve their desires, her reality spirals into madness. All the supporting characters in Black Swan present duality and contrast, so much so that we, the audience, and Nina as well, can never tell what is real and what is a manifestation of her insecurities. Aronofsky and cinematographer Matthew Lebetique deliver career best works in this collaboration that mirrors the Swan Queen's duality with its perfect production design and casting that's contained within the raw and unpredictable shots, which are all harmonized by a seamless edit. I spent the last 2 hours warming up, and I'm one limber lion who is incredibly lucky to have a dance partner for this review who herself is both a dance instructor and, as I've witnessed first paw, a phenomenal performer as well. Miss Emily Poley, welcome to the Jungle Studio. And can I ask, have you ever experienced any anthropomorphism while performing?
Hello, I am very happy to be here. I actually did perform a ballet that was titled Penny's Dreadful, and I was not an animal, but I was a vampire.
Yeah, that's like half bat, right?
Yeah.
Totally counts. Take it from a full lion, half bat, definitely get you points on the anthropomorphism side. Thank you again so much for being here and making the trip. As I mentioned in my intro, you yourself have done a little bit of dancing.
I have done a lot bit of dancing. I have been dancing for the better part of my entire life, to be honest. I really started when I was 13, and I am currently 27. I have really only danced. There's been a couple of times in my life where my parents tried to get me to do other things, but it never quite stuck. And dance was the one thing that I kept gravitating towards. And I eventually went to college, which is where we met, it was a fun experience. Students of mine that have gone on tours that have said, "Oh my God, I saw you."
Yeah, Emily and we met on set a couple, I'm just gonna say a couple years ago, wink, wink, for a shoot that we were doing for Jacksonville University. It was directed by the wonderful Ryan Scott. And yeah, it was honestly one of my favorite shoots I've ever done. I grew up in Florida, so I got to go back to Florida for the shoot, which was really fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. Way back when, like, people actually ordered, like, the DVDs off of Netflix, my parents ordered this because it was Black Swan, and it came out in 2010.
Yes.
And at that time, I was like, I don't know, way too young to be watching this.
Imagine, yeah.
But there are specific clips that I vividly remember. I must have like left the room because there's a lot of it. I was like, oh, wow, okay.
Well, when we get to visual storytelling, I'm definitely gonna do a little bit of mining to ask you what those moments were.
When I was rewatching it, I started watching it when it was still daytime, and I didn't make it through the entirety of it until it turned night, and I had to stop watching it because I was like, I am getting creeped out now. I need to watch this again when it's late outside.
And on that note, the first category we always talk about on the show is plot. This is, I mean, loosely, but is an adaptation of Swan Lake in many ways. And like I said, you go on quite the journey from what at the beginning kind of feels, it is this really beautiful opening sequence where it's just dark and it's on the stage, but, kind of neutral in terms of tone.
It sort of starts off as like sort of feeling like a typical dance movie where you have the star that really wants to be noticed by the director, and she's really, really wanting this big role, and she feels like she has something to prove. It's not until probably like 30 minutes in where it starts to like really turn, and like the relationship with her mom starts to get really weird, and you start to feel these little nuances that like something just is not right with this person. Like,
These little cracks that start to form pretty early on, and when you see them, it's just subtle, but you can't miss them, and then they just kind of expand from there. And you mentioned
mhm,
the relationship with her mother is probably the most sort of unsettling part about the whole.
mhm,
As much as she's sort of I don't want to say a victim, but kind of a victim of the world that she's in. It is sort of fueled by her ambitions. When she goes home, you definitely feel like she's sort of trapped, and she does not have control over that
mhm.
space.
I couldn't quite relate to that feeling of like having like a helicopter mom or a dance mom, because my parents were so totally uneducated in the arts period. Um, so which was kind of, I guess, a blessing. So that way, sort of when I went to my dance classes, it was like I was going to a different world for myself that was exclusively for me. Like they don't know anything about it. But in her situation, going home to a mom that's like, she understands all of the dynamics about it. She knows what it feels like, and she sort of understands the mental side of it. It's draining. Like you need, as a professional, you need to step away from it. Otherwise, it becomes all consuming, which is what we witnessed in that movie.
Yeah, there is this sort of duality between the white swan and the black swan. They're kind of represented in every aspect of the movie, and similarly with the plot. Every time something sort of goes well, she's immediately up against something bad. When she thinks something's going to happen that's bad, something ends up going well, and her ability to navigate that is what I think is maybe the most interesting part of the film.
The unpredictability of the world, and when you try to control things, it tends to not happen the way that you want it to go.
Exactly, which is, I mean, and maybe you can speak to this, I think as a performer, kind of an inescapable lesson, whether you're dancing, whether you're on stage doing comedy or any number of things. The more you try to just have complete dominion over your routine, the more it controls you. And then the less control you kind of have when things inevitably do go wrong. But if you can kind of let go and just exist within the performance in a way, kind of like jazz, where if something,
Mhm.
but you can turn it into a part of the performance, then you're truly just sort of, I don't know, fully in it.
Yeah, no, that was definitely very well said. Like when you have an expectation for how you want something to turn out, it's usually never going to turn out the way that you want it to, which is really upsetting and can lead to paranoia because you're just constantly searching for something that I mean, in live art, it's never going to be exactly what you want it to be. There's always going to be something that goes wrong. And I just had a performance last night. So I actually felt that very truly. Like in my mind, I was wanting to really hit these moments, but when I got to the stage, and it just I could feel that it wasn't going to happen, and you have to make a decision to let it go and just let it be what it's going to be. Or you can really struggle and try to make it what you want it to be, and then it usually falls short, and then that's disappointing.
Everything you're describing, it's all internal. It's all in your head, And I think as artists and performer, we can talk about it and we can see it, but at the same time, it is just a very interesting and unique part of the human experience that you just sort of feel in a moment or in a period of time that can be unsettling but super rewarding, and it's kind of sometimes the best and worst part of performing. Yeah, I really again appreciate this plot, and at the end we'll reveal my score, but I should ask you, 1 out of 10, what would you give the plot for Black Swan?
1 out of 10. I would probably, from a dancer's perspective, I would probably give it like 6 is coming to my mind. I think if I didn't know much about dance, I would probably be really entertained by it. What sort of bothered me a little bit that they touched on in the movie was the idea of the director sort of like controlling everybody. And I do think it bothers me because I do think it has truth to it, but I believe that is shifting inside of the dance world and probably in other aspects of the world as well. But people are just becoming more assertive in their power and recognizing, specifically in the dancer's perspective, like you are the product that people are going to see. So you shouldn't be giving your power to somebody who is this artistic director who quote unquote controls your path of your career when everybody could choose to walk away and then they have nothing.
The character of the director in this is a really interesting one because he is in many ways sort of the villain. Again, he's sort of this object of desire from Natalie Portman's character, but at the same time is this sort of caricature of a director. And I think that it's difficult as someone who's also in production who sees something like this, because you see the caricature side of it and it does kind of tend to, at least for me, it tends to make me kind of roll my eyes, because there are certain things that just happen that you're like, whoa, that is like so beyond an overstep, that would never happen. And this just became like kind of a different type of story. But I will say, while watching it, I did sort of always remember, okay, this is also supposed to be this sort of adaptation of Swan Lake. And so at times I had to kind of interpret the director as less of a director and less of literally being in this role that we're seeing, and more of this, again, sort of metaphor that's this adaptation, which is just to say that at least for someone who does more producing and directing, I could probably maybe take that in as someone a little bit differently as someone who's on the performing side of it, which I can see that would maybe induce a little more than just eye rolling, as watching.
If you're familiar with the name George Balanchine, I feel like there might have been perhaps some research that the cat or the crew did, because now I don't know all like the facts about it, but I listened to this podcast called The Turning Point, which brought on previous dancers from the New York City Ballet when he was still alive, Mr. Balanchine. And he was that type of person where he found the dancers that he really really liked and he would groom them, and he eventually married like probably like 3 or 4 of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was definitely into his woman. Big fan of the ladies. So I think that character in the movie definitely.
It's hard to think that that's not drawing maybe some direct inspiration there. And you use the term grooming, and yeah, I think that's a theme that's definitely explored in this film, because it is something that, unfortunately, in almost all aspects of entertainment is a problem. And especially when you have a form of entertainment that's kind of being overseen by one gender, but like largely populated by another gender on the performance level. I guess I'll digress talking about Vincent Castle's character, who is a sort of director, or yes, director is the best term, because there are obviously lots of other performances in this movie. We've got Winona Ryder, who makes just kind of a little side appearance as the sort of older dancer who, I hesitate to say has been replaced, but has kind of been pushed out of the company, and Natalie Portman has now taken her position. We have Sebastian Stan, who makes a very, very brief cameo. It's just a fella that Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis meet in the bar. Who knew that she would be meeting a man who would go on to play President Donald Trump and the Winter Soldier, a real IMDb page to be proud of. But of course, in the two lead roles, we have Mila Kunis, which is kind of a rare dramatic role, a rare kind of, I mean, she's obviously known mostly for her television work and has made a handful of like romantic comedies. But I remember at the time really being surprised to see her doing like a Dick movie. But she really does hold her own. Obviously, we have Natalie Portman in the lead.
They seemed like they really put forth the effort to try and throw themselves into the world of the ballet company. It didn't feel like anything was off about it. I appreciated how they actually hired dancers for the dancing scenes because it actually made it feel real and not just like some kitschy film.
Yeah. It's almost there's certain things, certain athletes, when you watch them, when you go and you see it in person, you can immediately tell, like, oh, that's what a pro athlete looks like. It's the same thing with dancers. There's just a grace. And I will say, again, someone who's not an aficionado at all, I was really surprised watching Natalie Portman. There were moments in particular I was like, wow, she really seems to have achieved like a real, I don't know, fluidity is the right word, but like real lightness to her movement that, I don't know, I thought was impressive. She did win the Academy Award for Best Performance for this, so clearly a few other people thought that she did that. But I am like genuinely curious from your perspective. I mean, did she pass as a professional dancer, or did you see any moments that stood out to you of like, ooh, sorry, Padme, that doesn't cut it?
No, I think I've seen that she did probably like 3 months of intensive dance training or intensive ballet training specifically. So I think she did her homework in it because there wasn't anything that really threw me off. Like her arms, we call that port de bras in dance. It seemed really nice. There's like pages on Instagram that are like models who dance, and it's like really bad. Like they clearly don't, but she passed.
I want to ask then, 1 out of 10 characters and performances overall.
I let's see. I would give I eights. I give them eights.
It hit, I could see it. The number came to you that was very, very natural, very organic. Well, that brings us to the next category of visual storytelling. I mean, this is obviously, again, a dance movie. There's a lot of time spent in the practice room, on the stage. Did you feel kind of, I don't want to say at home, that feels cheesy.
A large majority of it felt authentic. The opening part when they were having their warm-up class, and then Mr. Director Man like came out and started talking to them, that was definitely very cinematic. They would not do that. And if they did do that, I would be super bothered by that because like your warm-up class is for you to warm up and get prepared for the day. Like if you want to have a meeting, you can do that after we're done. There were a few moments like towards the end when she was rushing to the theater for her performance.
Yeah.
Like there is no way she would actually arrive there, put on her makeup, and be ready to go on the stage.
I would just assume she was doing like stretches on the subway train. Yeah, because she goes from like being in bed, wrestling her mother, getting a doorknob, grabbing her coat, and like seconds later is off the train. I do want to ask you, every once in a while on the show, we play a little game. I decided since this movie was a little heavy, maybe a game would lighten the mood. And of course, I know you, again, as a performer, might not always get the opportunity to be in the judge's seat. So I thought we'd play a little game called Emily Judges. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 3 characters, and you can let me know what you thought of them in their respective artistic categories. The first one, I believe you refer to him as the director man, so I'm going to continue to use that. How would you judge the director man in terms of being a director? It sounds like maybe a little unprofessional is what I was picking up earlier.
He gave me major icks. I would not want to work for that man.
All right. Well, that's about as much of a Google review as I need. Major icks. All right. Locked in. The second, then, we kind of mentioned this earlier, but how good of a dancer is Nina? It sounds like pretty solid.
I mean, technically, she's very solid. Emotionally, she could use a lot of work, which is what the large part of the plot was. She couldn't, like, really access the human side of her. She could do all the steps beautifully, but
so
being an artist is more than that.
It's very true. All right, so Nina, perfect as a dancer, maybe needs a little work with it.
Yeah, she just needed to go take some Molly and experience.
Just needed a roll. Yeah, that's all she needed. All right, well then the third person to round out this, maybe the only edition of Emily Judges is how good of a painter would you say Nina's mom is?
Oh. Um, I mean, if she was doing like elementary school art class, that would be great.
Wait, how about this? How good of a painter do you think she is if she was on Molly while she was painting?
Oh,
Would
I
they?
mean, that would be maybe that she would be like artist of the year.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. There's sort of this weird horror element where Natalie Portman like finds this room where like her mom just has all these.
And they start talking to her.
Yeah, it's very creepy. But even just the standalone paintings, you're kind of like, oof, mom. Check out you something. Find a tutorial. They were a little rough. Yeah.
Well, is there good art? Is there bad art? No.
Hey, fair enough. No, that's a very profound question that you're leaving us with here. So I appreciate that. Let us know in the comments if there is good art or if there is bad art. Um, Visual storytelling is ultimately the category that we're in here, and I personally, I felt like this film did a really good job of again kind of capturing the theme of the what they were trying to achieve with the characters in the visuals. There's a lot of handheld shots, but then it kind of cuts back to these sort of wider, almost like security cam footage shots. They're always a little bit higher and they're locked off and still. And it's very smooth, but again, it kind of feels gritty. But everything we're looking at is always, again, very curated and very well done and pure, especially early in the film. Everything's kind of black and white, especially when we're in the dance studio, when we're in the director man's office. There's just these pieces of black and white and stuff that are leaning around on things. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. You don't see that a lot where the production design is sort of so elevated, but then the camera work is a bit raw and a little more loose.
Well, I appreciate that um insight into it because I am not I don't key into those things. So when you're saying that, I feel like that is kind of reflective, speaking specifically on the ballet world, where they put on a very put together and very crisp and clean, and like all their I's are dotted and the T's are everything is clean. But when you go and you experience like the dancer side of it, like a lot of the times dancers aren't paid enough to really live well.
Right.
So we're just like scraping by. And a lot of times people are coping with things that they can't talk about at work. So it's like you have very, on the outside, it's very presentational, but on the inside, it's very rough.
This is very much about the world of dance as this sort of backdrop and character as much as anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really highlights how all-consuming it can be in pursuit of getting to that highest level of excellence. Like you have to first of all love what you're doing and really want to do it. But there's also a sort of a degree where it's very easy to lose yourself in it because you just want to be that perfect thing. And especially in dance, it's like you can kind of fall into the pitfall of your value is the roles that you're given, and you lose your sense of humanness because you're giving it all to this director man.
Damn director, man. It always comes back to him. No, but you're right. There's a vulnerability that it requires, but you don't really get that back. Like there's no way as a performer to really ever get back what you give and to operate at certain levels, especially when we're talking about a physical performance like ballet, it almost requires you to be obsessed. But it's just like, how do you walk that tightrope of being obsessive, but then being able to just clock out at the end of each
Mm-hmm.
shoot and go home? And yeah, when you're talking about, again, something like dance, which requires sort of an other like another level of human balance, another level of human dexterity. It's like you really have to put all of yourself into it, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, even in my contract that I'm currently in, like it's a part of it that we have to maintain a certain level of physical fitness. And that's just because we have to be like literally we have to be able to do what is asked for us. It is not for like aesthetic reasons, but it is a physically demanding job and you can't get around that. So it is a part of it, maintaining your peak fitness.
That's right. Like, we gotta get see. That's what the dancers need, like Gatorade sponsorships and stuff. That's what we need. We need
I know. We need
money in the pockets, and
Yeah, well, interestingly, I had a conversation with another dancer a couple summers ago, and she actually lives in Germany. And she told me that actually in Europe they value dance differently than they do here in the States. Like she can go to the bank and try to get, I don't know, a credit card or open an account or something. And when they ask her what her profession is, she says she's a dancer. They're like, oh, that's so wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, I go to a bank here and they ask me, like, what can they file that under?
God bless the good old U.S. of A. Nothing says, yeah, freedom. Like, can you please find a box to put yourself in so
Yeah.
we can tax you appropriately? Visual storytelling, Emily, 1 out of 10. What would you give it for Black Swan?
Visual storytelling.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, I think it really does an excellent job of diving into the psychosis of losing yourself. So, but I would say a 7.
The 7 is locked in. That brings us to use of sound. Now, like I've said a few times, this is obviously based on the work of Tchaikovsky. So there's plenty of pieces from Swan Lake that are used to good effect. And again, when we talk about being an adaptation, there are moments where you absolutely know what part of the story you're in because of the use of Tchaikovsky's work. But what really stood out to me was the sound design and the sound effects and the visceral nature of not only like the physicality of the dancing, but then also this sort of transformation she's undergoing throughout the film. There's I don't know. It really was maybe my favorite part of the movie, honestly, was the sound design because I had kind of forgotten about all that. And as I'm watching, I was like, whoa, this is really, really good.
Yeah, I know I remember when it first came out, a lot of people would make fun of how breathy it is because you can really just like hear her breath all the time. And I do think that is kind of ridiculous. Like they could have toned that down a bit. But I also think it's real. Like when you're dancing, like I know a lot of dancers who are they really breathe heavily, which sometimes is a little excessive, but I also understand it because your breath really does help you when you need it to. When I was watching the movie, I feel like they only really used a couple of like really key moments of the ballet, like the Black Swan pas de deux and the White Swan. I feel like they really cut out a large part of the ballet.
Yeah, it's like I said, there's definitely only like moments. And like I said, it's a bit obvious when they're using them. You're like, oh, okay, here we are. We're doing this now.
I mean, I get the story, so there you go.
Yeah, it is so much, I guess, like singing or other things where, yeah, the way you breathe is completely going to affect your performance. And yes, as a lion who briefly for a spell in my life may or may not have been training in pro wrestling, it's very similar. Where when you're certain guys, they sound like a freight train when they're in there, but they never get out of breath. They're just able to go and go and go. Other people very quiet. They get blown up a little bit quicker. But yeah, interesting that was a response from the dance community. Listen to the breathiness of it. But yeah, you also mentioned earlier this sort of again in the visual storytelling, how you said it kind of did a good job of how you sort of lose yourself in it. Do you feel like the sound sort of helped with that as well? Just kind of this a bit dizzying at times, I guess it
Mm-hmm.
described.
No, I did like it, especially like when she grew her wings and you could really hear the wings flapping and you could feel her becoming the Black Swan. I did like that. I like how Tchaikovsky was underlying. It really felt like you were inside of her brain rather than an audience member watching the ballet.
I really appreciate that. Well, then I'll ask you 1 out of 10 use of sound. what would you lock it in at?
Mm. Use of sound. I would say 9.
9. I love it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
highest score so far. I love.
Yeah. I don't I feel like I'm giving really high numbers, but I have nothing to base it off of.
No.
So
Look, this is your first time on Real Talk. You're coming in with the critical eye of a professional. This is what we need. So these are the real numbers. No pun intended. Maybe there's a little bit of a pun intended there. Regardless, that brings us to the final category of theme. I noted quite a few themes in this. I'll rattle off a few that I noted, and of course, you can tell me if you saw any more or elaborate on any of the ones that I say. But contrast, manipulation, obsession, abuse, perfection, temptation, shame, boundaries, transformation, madness, and maybe even a little self-betrayal in there as well. Those were, I don't know, those movies seem like a big old cocktail of themes to me.
uh-huh. No, you nailed it on the head, absolutely. Felt like a coming of age story for Nina.
Again, in the most Tchaikovsky sort of way. Yeah, but again, I do feel like the way, I don't know, I suppose the way she really embodies the story and the character, she then, and by she obviously I mean Natalie Portman, has to, her performance kind of has to at any given point embody all these different themes, which I think is unique because a lot of movies, even in any ensemble cast, you don't necessarily have one character that's sort of the burden of experiencing everything. And I think that she does a really good job in her performance of sort of reflecting all these themes. And the only reason I say that is because there are a lot of movies out there that explore different themes, but the movie itself kind of gets into them. I really feel like it is Nina who we kind of spend, I don't know if there's a scene that she's not in. We really are with her the
Mhm.
entire time. And all of these themes that I mentioned are all themes that she has to kind of embody.
I don't know. I feel like her character might not have lost touch of itself, but she did need to grow up, so to speak. And like having that scene at the bar gave her that life experience that she needed to be able to step into a role that she was being asked to do. Growth is maybe something that I felt connected to.
Yes, no, I really agree that growth is a great theme because I feel like Nina's character doesn't really have a sense of identity at the beginning. And the only identity that she ever finds is this character of the Swan Queen and her becoming that and sort of, in theory, dying at the end is this sort of full transformation and metamorphosis
Mm-hmm.
um that occurs. So yeah, I think growth is absolutely, a theme that's really, really present through everything. So I'll ask you then, 1 out of 10, what would you grade the theme for Black Swan?
I would say a 9 as well.
2 9s in a row.
I really enjoyed this movie.
No, I'm really glad to hear that. I wasn't sure while I was watching it. I was like, all right, I don't know if she's seen it before or not. I was like, this is the first time seeing it. Maybe she thinks it's one thing. Maybe it'll be not. So I'm glad nothing caught you off guard, and I'm glad, definitely glad to hear that you enjoyed it. I will reveal your score to you now, as we have them all locked in. You gave the plot a 6, the characters and performances an 8, the visual storytelling a 7, the use of sound a 9, and the themes a 9 as well, for a total of 78. That's technically like a B plus here on Real Talk.
I'll give it a B plus. That feels good. I feel like I got more generous with my ratings as we went along.
If you thought your scores were generous, then you're probably gonna think I'm a very nice lion here, because I'll reveal my score. To your 6, I gave the plot an 8.5. I really enjoyed it. I think it has a lot of twists and turns, and it never really kind of finishes until the very end. So I appreciate it on that level. Characters and performances, as a lion who, spins around a little, can maybe do a Macarena if I have to. I gave it a 10 out of 10. I get novice point of view here. Visual storytelling, I also gave it a 10 out of 10. I just felt like it really married all of the elements visually really well with the story. And I truly kind of believe, I mentioned it in my open, I think this is the best work of Darren Aronofsky and the cinematographer as well. So that was good enough for a 10 for me. Use of sound to your 9. I gave it a 10 because again, I'm too nice of a lion. And then theme, we were actually totally aligned here. 9 and a 9. To your 9, I gave it a 9, which I think means that's the correct answer. So I gave it a 95, which for me was an A. I gave it an A.
Very good.
Yeah, so an A to a B plus, that comes out to an A minus. I don't think that's too shabby. I think Mr. T would be happy with that.
Probably is doing just fine, but
Yes, I know he's an avid listener to the show. So Darren Aronofsky, let us know in the comments if
yeah.
well or not. Emily, thank you again so much for coming to the jungle today and hanging out and watching Black Swan. I'm curious, would you maybe come back sometime? And if so, what's maybe a couple other of your favorite movies?
Do you do Disney?
We do Disney. We haven't done any Disney yet, but
Oh my gosh. I would say Hercules.
oh my gosh, what a great. Well, I wasn't sure what you were gonna say, but Hercules, that's an amazing.
Or Coco.
Coco, is that?
Disney?
I think so. Let us know in the comments if Coco is. We'll do a Coco episode just to confirm. But Hercules, I think, is definitely something we will eventually get into because I'm a big fan of Hercules.
You want to talk about it? Okay.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for coming. And this is the point where I'm supposed to insert some sort of like dance joke to sign.
Ooh.
And I don't know. So I don't know what's a good way to if you were gonna choreograph a dance, what would be the best finish, the best move to finish with? I'm talking the split. Okay, good. Wonderful. As a quadruped, I'm splits are a little rough, but all right, Emily. Well, I'm gonna work on my splits until the next time you come. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Platinum Plastic isn't just a proud sponsor of Real Talk, they're also the home for all our new designs and merchandise. Follow Platinum Plastic on Redbubble to see all our A-plus gear. That's Platinum Plastic on Redbubble for all your Real Talk merch.
Once you've conquered Hollywood by telling stories about the dark side of pet grooming, the seedy underbelly of professional bowling, and the lengths men will go to get Cameron Diaz to fall in love with them, what's next? In the year 2000, the Farrelly brothers did the obvious and made a romantic comedy that is a love triangle between two people. Me, Myself, and Irene contains a lot of jokes, but feels like fewer than we're used to considering the creative team, and unfortunately the misses seem more like a writing-directing team trying to keep up with their own pace instead of an inspired bit of humor that went too far. And then there are other groups that the film mercilessly goes after, which prevents any charm the film contains from fully blooming. I did laugh a lot during this movie, but mostly towards the beginning when the film's theme of perception versus reality is hysterically explored, while Jim Carrey delivers a performance that probably deserves a script of equal quality. Everyone in the cast delivers, and the stellar collection of actors has aged much better than some of the movie's more unfortunate jokes. Trends come and go fast in Hollywood, and the 4-year run the Farrelly brothers had writing and directing Dumb and Dumber, Kingpin, and There's Something About Mary from 94 to 98 seemed to be past the finish line by 2000's Me, Myself, and Irene. Barring any mental collapse, we're unlikely to speak in fourth person during the next review, but Jimmy the Toucan has returned to help me score the fourth Farrelly brothers film, and knowing him, he'll likely speak in third person during the entire review. Jimmy, has your wife ever been illegitimately impregnated by one of your limo drivers?
Well, it's good to be back, Al. Can't really say at this.
Yeah, you don't have to answer that. I'm sorry. That was a real personal question I opened with.
Yeah, I think he rode a motorcycle, actually.
Oh, that tracks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew when I put this movie on the slate, there's only one person. There's only one Bertson that I can talk to about it, and Jimmy came to mind. Do you mind enlightening the audience and letting us know when you first saw this film?
I have always loved Jim Carrey, and even as a toucan, I kind of do resemble Jim Carrey a little bit. I saw Ace Ventura in the theater, and I remember like that was my thing. That became my thing. I learned all the lines. We had it on home video. I would do all of the bits for it. This is a Jim Carrey movie with other stuff happening. And I like what you said in the beginning about the importance of his work here. I think that he is absolutely at the height of his character work, his like slapstick animated character work. and working with the Fairleys, it's such a complementary team.
I'm almost certain before this he would have done uh,
Truman Show.
Truman Show, yeah, which has a comedic element to it, but not slapsticky at all. But I do think, yeah, this again maybe one of his sort of swan song comedies of that sort of '90s era.
And I think that what's so great is that the Fairley brothers gave him the latitude to just freak out and do what he does. And that's what makes it so wonderful to me. It's so funny.
I want to know your thoughts on the plot. Quick summary of the plot for people who might not be familiar with it. Basically, we have Jim Carrey's character who is a state trooper, and he's kind of a pushover. He ends up falling in love, and on his wedding day, after being driven home, the limo driver who drove he and his bride home. They end up getting into a bit of a scuffle. The bride ends up being impregnated, we find out later, by the limo driver, who she then ends up running away with. Now, unfortunately for Jim, he ends up having to raise the triplets of the limo driver and his ex-wife. And so, yes, that was sort of his past. Now he is the father who's raising these 3 adult men as a state trooper, and he has been assigned the task of escorting a lovely lady across state lines, basically from Rhode Island to upstate New York. And obviously they get into some hilarious adventures along the way. But mainly what we see is that due to all the repressed trauma that Jim Carrey's character has experienced, he develops a second personality that is what gives the film its title. You know, for me, the way the movie is set up, it's very funny. I feel like it's kind of almost the halfway point. It stops being like a Farrelly Brothers comedy and starts becoming this like Farrelly Brothers romantic comedy.
Mhm.
And I don't know, it didn't work so well for me, and I think that is again something I'm putting to focus on the plot, obviously.
Yeah, I think I had the same reservations. I feel like there were devices in place just to push the comedy along, just to give Jim opportunities to like do funny stuff. Uh, I, I wasn't really buying the love story part of it, but I did like that, and I like that it serves to again provide opportunities for Jim Carrey to be hilarious.
I guess my takeaway from it was because I look at a movie like Dumb and Dumber that has these sort of false endings, and they're really funny, and the whole movie is funny, and by the time you get to the end, you're laughing. And I just didn't really have that experience with this movie. As much as I'm laughing at the beginning, and there are laughs towards the end, I mean, it was almost so sugary sweet and silly at the end that it just wasn't even funny anymore. It had like lost all of its edge for me. I mean, even when the like Charlie's 3 sons are in the plane at the end and they're all, you know, kind of like, I don't know, like it just didn't work as well for me. That tonally was just very different, I felt like, from the beginning, where there was a little bit more edge and sharpness. But I don't know if it was studio notes. Again, I don't know if it's the Farrelly brothers trying to mature into something different. I mean, early on, the scene with the cow, you know, it's like that's such a, to me, such a funny scene. And then later we hear, you know, the cow didn't die, and the way that's delivered is so funny when the 2 cops are talking. Like the poor thing barely survived. I laugh so hard at that. And again, there's just an edge there.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that there's a there's a specific tone that Fairley Brothers movies have, and they walk you to that line, and then they just kind of nudge you over it and push you over it. One of my favorite parts, for example, is when the his wife leaves him for the limo driver. She jumps into his awesome car, and she's saying goodbye, and they do like a little kiss, and we cut to Jim, and he's sort of grossed out. But then we cut back to them where they do this horrible like tongue kiss, and then Jim's reaction is so funny. it's like they didn't have to show that part of it, but they chose to because it's that like pushing you over the edge kind of tone.
There's an absurdity that they explore through the darkness of the situation. And maybe that's the key. At the beginning of the movie, all of these bad things are happening. And by the end of the movie, by virtue of it being a romantic comedy, they get together. That's not a bad thing happening. And I think it's just hard to be funny and edgy at a wedding or when two characters are falling in love. But I'm curious, Jimmy, 1 out of 10, what would you give the plot?
Jimmy gave it an 8.
Jimmy gave it an 8. Al's locking it in.
Locking it in, boy.
That brings us to characters and performances. Clearly, you enjoyed Jim Carrey in this movie, as I did as well. And I'll make this point before I tee you up to talk about what is really an incredible cast. like I forgot who all was in this. It was like, there's some real heavy hitters in this movie. But obviously, yeah, the whole formula is clearly designed to be a vehicle for Jim Carrey. And he does such a good job of creating this Charlie character who is the softer, the more reserved character, in Hank, who is very much his like hyper masculine, repressed, sort of egotistical side, who hilariously gets humbled a lot. You kind of mentioned earlier that Hank sort of gets revenge. Hank kind of gets his ass kicked a lot. Hank, like Charlie is often paying for the sins of Hank, down to getting his face reconstructed. But it is the duality between the two that feels so separate. And there's plenty of movies, obviously here in 2025, we have a movie like Sinners, which is a big hit, where you have one actor playing multiple characters, but rarely do you have the actor playing two characters in the same body who you seamlessly sort of switching back and forth between. I mean, there's a fight scene between the two characters at one point that feels like a PhD course in being a mime. It's like incredible what he pulls off. So anyway, that's obviously me covering a lot of bases.
Yeah, that's a good point
About him, and then I'd love to get your thoughts on some of the other casts.
That's a good point, that last part where it's another movie where Jim Carrey is kicking his own ass. He did that in Liar Liar too.
Yeah,
that was so funny. You are right. You are very right about this stellar cast. I think this is the movie that we all, as a culture, fell in love with Renee Zellweger. I think this is the movie.
Well, I think Bridget Jones' Diary might be telling someone to hold its beer, right, or hold her.
Oh, was that?
But yeah, Chicago may have played a small role.
I think those movies happen afterwards, didn't they? Isn't this like her like big break kind of movie?
99, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Great characters.
Yeah.
Great characters. Great character actors. Robert Forster is such a good guy, like such a good bad guy. There's like little cameos that are funny, like there's a shot with Anna Kournikova in it because she was like really popular then. Like I forgot about her, There's another great actor who I want to call attention to, Anthony Anderson, who played one of Charlie's sons.
Jamal.
He is so funny. He is such a versatile actor because I know him from playing a hard-boiled detective on TV's Law and Order. And so to see him keep repeating, like punctuating every sentence with motherfucker is so funny to me. He is great. Those three guys are so funny together and are great actors. There is this, on to Jim, there is this Clint Eastwood impression that he's doing as Hank. And he is such a good like improviser in these scenes doing this voice. And it's really funny.
What voice is that, Jimmy?
Yeah, that's it. And I think that I believe the chemistry between Jim Carrey and Renee Zellweger. I like that. I like that. I like their love story, um, and she's like a apple pie kind of sweetheart. She's American sweetheart, and he's this really nice guy that has like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing going on. Um, I have so much to say about Jim Carrey. I love his transformation scenes. Again, when like he's such a master of transforming in that moment into we always see him transform into Hank, uh, and it will be from some kind of trigger, and there's always like a cool like drum solo that happens, and it's really funny. I love one of my favorite parts. One of my favorite parts of the whole movie is he calls this little girl fuckface, and I just laugh my
Yeah.
oh my.
Chris Cooper, who is in another one of my favorite movies, Adaptation, which we review on this season, and Richard Jenkins, who we also reviewed Shape of Water on this season of Real Talk. So yeah, some real heavy hitters in this cast. And I agree with what you said earlier about Renee Zellweger. She is just super sweet, super lovable. Really, really easy to get a crush on watching this movie. So you can easily see why Charlie and Hank are both into her, and she holds her own so well against both of them, whether it's Charlie the state trooper, whether it's Charlie who's in love with her, whether it's Hank who she's keeping in line or getting manipulated by. They have a really great chemistry. So I'll ask you there, Jimbo, 1 out of 10, what do you give the characters and performances?
Jimmy gives it a 9.
Locking in the 9.
Locking in the 9.
That was like scary, Hank. That was a scary Hank.
Oh.
Now we're talking about visual storytelling. I'll just ask you, Jimmy, what were some of your thoughts on visual storytelling?
Well, I think a lot of these sight gags are really important for the comedy of it. And I want to call attention also to they they got a lot of beautiful locations in Rhode Island and upstate New York to do this thing. And um, at the same time, they filled these public scenes with tons of extras and secondary characters, onlookers, so many people involved. And uh, I also want to call attention to there are a lot of stunts in this movie. There's high falls, there's helicopters, there's crashes. There's a lot of stunt work going on, which I think to me really contributed to the visual storytelling. There's also a part where they shoved a chicken up the cop's ass, which is one of my favorite moments from when I was a kid.
They definitely, when you were a kid, 19-year-old Jimmy, ladies and gentlemen. Just,
Young Jimmy laughing his pants off.
yeah, this movie, it's interesting. It had a budget, an estimated budget of $51 million. So a very humble budget. I mean, in the year 2000, that's definitely not small by any stretch
Yeah.
of the imagination. But yeah, a lot of, like you said, notable kind of stunt work. One of my favorite gags, we talked about this off air, is when they got to catch a train, and Charlie or Hank, I can't even remember which one. I think it's Charlie who is encouraging Renee Zellweger, and it works to the point where she outruns him, gets on the train. He then realizes he cannot get on the train and has to ask her to jump off, and she has to jump off the train. That whole scene was very funny. And as a lion who may or may not have once been an assistant director, I was like, yeah, that would have been very challenging to do that scene, to get your train to back up, to do anything more than just 1 or 2 takes. That would have been a real, yeah.
And at the tail end of it, she jumps off the train way off the tracks.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Jumps. It's so funny.
but yeah, when he says, "You gotta jump," and she doesn't hear him. She goes, "What? You gotta jump."
So the costumes were really good. The locations were great. The costumes were really good. A lot of the dialogue sequences felt really stagey because they were set up a little wider so they could give Jim some latitude to do stuff.
Sure.
But when we go in close, like, he has such a movie star face, and his face is so flexible and plastic. He can do so much with his face, and they really took advantage of that here.
Poor Renee Zellweger. One costume the whole movie. Doesn't have one change the entire movie. I would imagine this is maybe the only movie she's ever co-starred in that she doesn't have one costume change the entire. If she never has to wear another pair of like, eggplant capri, she'll probably be too happy. Anyway, visual storytelling, Jimbo, 1 out of 10.
Jimmy gives it a 7.
Locking in a 7.
Locking that 7.
Brings us to the use of sound. That was my crazy Hank transition. For the next category, I'll be Hank the Lion.
Whoa, Lion Hank.
No, I won't do that. I don't.
Jimmy gonna be.
I can hear people clicking off. This is a good time to remind everyone to leave a like, leave a comment, and don't stop listening. But use of sound, Jimmy, you've noted several times of the transitional music they use, which is this sort of cornucopia of just so many different kind of sounds and wild things that is this sort of trigger to his transition.
Well, I agree with you. The sound effects and the sound design are used to emphasize these really funny moments. And it's really important for comedy to have really strong sound design. I don't recall much of the scoring of it, but to answer your question, my favorite sound gag is when he has a whistle in his nose and his nose is always whistling. It's the funniest.
No, it's so good. Well, let me ask you this, Jimmy, because I feel like this is a good enough category as they need to bring it up. The voiceover work in the film. I feel like this obviously has some really notable voiceover work by the narrator in the picture.
And it also keeps tight all of these disparate elements because it's a journey movie, and time passes and the narration is really important. Who is the narrator?
Rex Allen Jr. is the answer you're looking for.
The hilarious narration by Rex Allen Jr. really sews together all of these disparate elements of the plot. Because it is a journey movie, we get an important connection to what is happening and as time passes. He's got a great voice, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, he does a great job. He does a fantastic job. Yeah, well, and even the soundtrack. There's some licensed music and stuff in there, but it has a lighter, very much again Fairley Brothers kind of tone, very in line with some of their other pictures. But yeah,
even some of the fight scenes and stuff, like there's like slap noises and bashing noises and stuff. Like when he's getting into little fight with the limo driver in the beginning, there's some really great
By the way, Tony Cox plays the limo driver, who in the character name is Limo Driver, which is very funny. Also funny that one of his 3 children's character's name is Shorty Jr. A joke provided by the IMDb page there. I'm curious, Mr. Jimmy, what would you give the use of sound 1 out of 10?
Jimmy gives it an 8.
The 8 is locked in, Jimmy. We
lock in that 8.
Very similar scores on this movie, you and I. The theme is the last category. You might know that. You've done this before. In this movie, I noted a theme or two, and those themes were repressed emotions, truth and trust, perception versus reality.
Wow. Those are all really good themes. I think we could get really deep with connecting some of these together. I saw it as a portrait of how people are cruel to each other and cruel to strangers. And as an audience, we don't like that. And we want to see people that are cruel. We want to see them punished. And that punishment comes in the form of Hank's transformation. And you're right. He didn't typically win all the time. But I think what matters is that we feel good when bullies are punished, when mean people are crushed, not because of vengeance, but because of their actions and their choices.
Well, I just want to say, I think that there is a balance there that is sort of the story in the end, right? Because I don't think Charlie is right, and I don't think Hank is right. And I think a lot of the failures that Hank encounters is the lesson that Hank needs to be more like Charlie, and Charlie needs to be more like Hank. And it is that balance of dealing with things and dealing with threats. So I don't know that I align as much that there's this endorsement of punishment, or even that Hank is really punishing people. I agree that Hank is triggered by Charlie getting bullied or being kind of stepped on, and
Mhm.
he's sort of like overcompensating for that. But I feel like, again, this is the point of the movie, is rarely does Hank actually succeed in getting any punishment. In fact, it's hard for me to think of a time where he doesn't do something that, gets them into more trouble. Because even in instances where like he saves their lives, but is only then at gunpoint seconds later when Renee Zellweger actually saves them. So, there is this like, like he has his purpose, but even the little bit of good he does, he sort of immediately everything kind of falls apart. So I do agree that there is this satisfaction that we get when we see Hank coming, but I feel like the movie uses Hank as a vehicle for comedy through his failure. I don't think it's necessarily like gratuitously sort of celebrating like, oh, a bully is getting theirs, because it's hard for me to actually think of a point where a bully really does get theirs.
You got me thinking about this sort of duality of man thing, where there's an imbalance within this person, and that imbalance comes out in these different personalities, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And it's true, like when Mr. Hyde comes out, when Hank comes out, um, worse things happen for Charlie when outside of the hotel, when the guy flicks the cigarette butt, and then they kick the crap out of him. He transforms into Hank, and they kick the crap out of him. Uh, and I think the guy actually says, "Let's kick his ass." So I think it calls attention to that balance, that delicate balance that we have as human beings or as Americans, like dealing with the stresses and the challenges every day, right? To make the choice to um, do the right thing, be the better person, or to lash out and uh, uh, choose violence.
I think that the idea of, again, reality in that theme is really tested in this, and by that, you really don't know until the kind of end where Renee Zellweger's character is going to fall. You don't know if she is the femme fatale or if she really is who she's claiming to be. And so there's that element to it. You obviously have, like we said, Charlie and his three sons that he is raising, and this idea of the perception of the father versus the reality of being a father, and any number of things. So I did feel like the film it did do a good job of exploring its themes, again, in this very silly way that unfortunately does have to kind of get tied up in this love story at the end, which I do think kind of prevents it from allowing its themes to fully be explored, because it just kind of has to have this ending that isn't really reflective of necessarily what it's not that it's, again, then not completely off, but like I said, I think we could probably sit here for a while and come up with funnier endings and sillier ways to resolve these themes.
Well, I'm with you. I didn't really watch this movie to like learn anything about myself. Um, I saw this then, as I saw this recently, as a chance to cut loose and chill and relax and laugh at this remarkable performer.
I think that is a great way to summarize it. Jimmy, what would you give the themes 1 out of 10?
That being said, Al, Jimmy gives the theme a 6.
That means Jimmy's got a total. That total starts with a plot. You gave it an 8. You gave the characters and performances a 9. You gave the visual storytelling, Jimmy, a 7. You gave the use of sound an 8, and the themes a 6, for a total of 76, Jimmy. Now,
Okay.
That is a B. I mean, it's a solid B plus, if we're honest. We're only 4 points away from being an A. So do we want to lock in a B plus? Is that fair?
Yes, it's a B plus.
The B plus is in. We may or may not have one of our interns attacking my foot right now. But the B plus is locked in. Oh, hi.
Brought to you by Blastum blah, blah, blah.
I will now, of course, reveal my score per the rules. I
Okay.
have to follow them. The plot to year 8, I gave it a 6. I felt like, again, it really just sort of falls apart in the last act for me, and maybe even a little bit before that. To year 9, I gave the characters and performances a 7.5. I really felt like, again, Jim Carrey's performance is awesome here. But outside of that, again, things are funny, not really stellar, in my opinion. Visual storytelling, I gave it a 7 to year 7. Use of sound, I gave it an 8 to year 8. And the themes, I actually gave a 7 to year 6, so just a little bit more. So overall, I gave it a 71 to year 76. For me, this is a B. I'm happy to keep it at that. You gave it plus. Jimmy, I think this was a really fun movie. I can tell why you like it so much, and I'm really glad we got to chat about it a little bit.
Oh, same here. I want to call attention to teenage Jimmy really thought all of the dick jokes were hilarious. Okay. The dick jokes in the beginning where he's like cooking the sausages and the cop comes over and he says their dicks are bigger than sausages, and then later he like cuts them up, he smashes them. There's this hilarious bit in the bathroom where after having intercourse all night, he goes to urinate in the toilet and his pee goes everywhere, and he he ends up getting like curled up in the shower curtain. Just pee is going everywhere. Of course, there's this graphic dildo that he gets to act and perform with, which is also very funny, hilarious. Like Renee Zellweger got a big laugh out of the punchline of "You used it on yourself," just a lot of dick jokes.
The way she was, she's like, you used it on yourself. There's this regrettable, like these eyebrow, like, I don't know.
It's so funny.
In the silliness, the juxtaposition of his 3 sons up against this like police force is so funny, because it's like they're so intelligent and they're just one step ahead and there's nothing they can't do. That little bit at the beginning when he like leaves them to play and he comes back by the end of the day and they built an airplane and they're driving off. They're flying away and he's like, "Get back here, what are you doing?" It's just so sweet and funny. And yeah, again, that's again where I feel like this movie works so well, is there's a tenderness in their relationship. There doesn't need to be the wedding at the end. Let this just be a story about how the boys get their dad back, and he's the best dad ever because he's conquered this problem. And they don't need the love thing at the end. And so
it's the girl.
Yeah, in any way, I digress. But I think, this is a really funny movie. It's a really easy watch. And, it obviously, it's a Farrelly Brothers picture. So it goes out of its way to cross some lines. So it's hard to blatantly call it distasteful when that's kind of what it's trying to do, but because it's doing that in kind of the most tasteful way. Anyway, I know one of your other favorite Farrelly Brothers movie, maybe your favorite Farrelly Brothers movie, is Stuck on You. So maybe we'll have to have you back someday to talk about that.
That is my favorite comedy of all time, Stuck on You. That is one of my favorite funny movies ever. I love that movie. Yeah, bring me back, Al. Bring me back.
All right, Jimmy. Well, you got it. Next time, we might not be talking about Stuck on You, but we will be talking about something good. So, Jimmy, thanks for coming. And leave a like before you get out of here, okay?
Thanks, Al. We'll see you soon.
Before we jump into the next review, I just wanted to thank you for listening this far, and I ask that you leave a like if you're enjoying the show. And let us know what movies you'd like to hear us score on Real Talk. We're almost certainly on your favorite social media platform, so search Al the Movie Lion wherever you scroll.
If one loses control because they've gained it, it's likely a result of the individual earning dominion without truly intending to. Now, before you go down a rabbit hole thinking about your favorite member of middle management, let's try and stay focused on 1999's Fight Club. What begins as an author painting with dark comedic strokes, creating a trifecta of character whose inciting incident is an explosion of curated denial, becomes one of contemporary Hollywood's most recognizable halves of a twist by the time the credits hit. I spent nearly 26 years discussing this film, and rarely do I hear connections between Marla Singer and the narrator's hyperfeminine being discussed, because the satire that fuels the film is often completely misunderstood and inspires more underground fight rings than it does personal humility or inner reflection. But then again, what's to be expected when the film's villain is played by the coolest guy in Hollywood, who may come wrapped in a red herring-colored leather jacket, but his sexy post-fight shirtless pose is a still that's inspired more new gym memberships than the 1st of January. When you end where you begin, you're in a cycle. And when you lose your understanding of reality, it is just as easy to hurt yourself as it is to attack the conventions of society as if you were defending yourself. The cult of adopted ignorance in the name of acceptable violence and thoughtless emotional release is no fantasy. And a quarter of a century after its release, the film's message is as profound as it is unheard. There's a lot to unpack with this gritty modern classic, so I had to call in someone who is both a refined appreciator of visual storytelling and a combat expert. I'm incredibly excited to welcome to the jungle for the first time, from MMAfighting.com, anything but fighting's own, Mr. Jose Youngs. Jose, I appreciate you appearing for more than just one frame at a time.
Absolutely, man. I mean, stellar intro, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm glad you invited me onto this one because, like, I think we were talking before we kind of started recording. This is, I think, one of the movies I've seen the most in my life, either by choice or, as you said, I feel like when you're a very specific age, and you hang out with your friends, it's one of the movies that is kind of always on rotation. There are some movies I think I would have to rewatch before doing the movie podcast. This is not one of them.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen this movie. I mean, I was even trying to remember the first time I saw this movie, and I can kind of generally remember what age, but it's even hard for me to remember like a specific thing because it just seems like it's kind of just always been around. It was definitely part of my high school experience.
I'm not someone that will ever go out of his way to watch specific directors. I've never been like that. I'm not that way with authors, whether with books or comic books either. I find if you kind of marry yourself to a specific person, it leads to either disappointment or you watch things through rose-colored glasses a little too often. And I like to kind of just accept the story as a whole, whether it's good or bad. And so I also, hands up, I didn't know who David Fincher was the first time I saw this movie. I think I was 11 or 12. I know I was in 6th grade. I was obviously too young to see it in theaters when it came out. But I think one of my friend's older brothers had it on, had like the poster. And anytime you see a guy holding up a bar of soap that says Fight Club, you're immediately like, oh, that's interesting. And then I knew who Brad Pitt was. Obviously didn't know who Ed Norton was. And for a while, I would say Ed Norton was one of my favorite actors of all time. He still is. And I think this really kind of lit the fuse because even after that, because once you discover an actor that you kind of really appreciate, you kind of dive into the rest of their filmography. So from there, Primeval and what is it, The Italian Job or whatever it was on, like all those movies that came out, I'd be like, oh, it's the dude from Fight Club. And then eventually you kind of discover other people from that. So I think this came out at a time when you're discovering yourself. Because I think for me, you kind of watch what your parents watch. And I really credit like The Matrix and this movie with like, oh, this is what I like. The first time I saw it, I'm like, this is a sick action movie. I think I had the character arc myself with this movie. It was like, oh, this is a sick action movie. And then you become like the snobby film buff who's like, oh no, this is an art movie. And then later, this is about the deeper machinations of mankind. And then all of a sudden you rewatch it again, you're like, oh, this is just a fun movie. And then you kind of have this hate relationship where anyone over like between the ages of 25 and 30 that still loves Fight Club, you're just like, you like Fight Club? And then you hit 31 and you're like, oh, this movie is awesome. So yeah, I love this movie.
Yeah, all of the phases of a hipster film fan.
This is it. This is I say it's this movie, Fear and Loathing, Pulp Fiction, and to an extent, the Boondock Saints.
Yeah,
Like there is very much, I know exactly how old you are. If one of those 4 movies are your favorite movie.
Yeah. Totally agree. And when we're talking movie posters, I feel like the big 3, if you were in high school, either in the 2000s or even in the 90s, we're going to be your Fight Club, obviously more the 2000s, Pulp Fiction, as you mentioned, and then obviously Scarface, which is probably
yeah.
like 95% of
Absolutely.
dorm walls out there. Well, regardless, I guess we could be here all day talking about these ancillary things. The first rule of Real Talk is we break down the plot and score it 1 out of 10. But before I get an actual score out of you, I want to know, just generally speaking, what are your thoughts on the plot? Because this is clearly a movie that, as you mentioned, it grows with you at different times. You kind of see it for different things. It's a very layered, complex movie.
Yeah.
And I did recently rewatch it. And even I will admit I saw things I had not seen before. So I'm just curious, your thoughts on the plot, Mr. Youngs.
I think you nailed it right there, where for the first couple of years I was watching it, you're discovering more new things because you get older and you're not just watching it for like, oh, I'm watching this because it's violent, or oh, I want to see Helen Bonham Carter do, things that my parents don't want me to see. Now I'm at a point where I'm hoping I've noticed everything, but God knows I haven't. I'm a very big fan of unreliable narrators in any medium. I'm a huge fan of split personality stories where characters don't know they're not aware of what they're doing. And maybe it started with this movie. I don't honestly know. Maybe it started. This is one of those rare things where I saw the movie before I read the book.
Sure.
And I've always kind of loved this trope. So I'm not so much, I don't view it as like there are obviously some people that view this as like this anarchy style, like, oh, let's stick it to the man type storyline. And I understand that. I personally, as someone who's read a lot of books and seen a lot of movies, like the unreliableness of the story. I'm a huge fan of movies where when they're over and the first question you ask is, did that really happen? I love that. I love everything about that.
No, I totally agree. And the point that you're making about the unreliable narrator, I think, is all the evidence you need to say that this isn't actually a movie about anarchy. I think that is sort of the satire part of it, whereas this is very much a movie about self. I mean, you talk about split personalities, there's 2 forms of that. And I have a take that I want to get your take on when we get to characters and performances. So I'll reserve it for that. But I'm right there with you. I think that this is such an interesting and exciting plot because it's always kind of unraveling, and because it is a character sort of discovering themselves. You're always kind of discovering it. And I think if it were actually just a movie about a heist unrolling or something, you could really only see it a handful of times. I've seen Ocean's 11 a lot. At this point, I really am just kind of watching it for the laugh. So, there's not really much to it. A movie like this, my God, 26 years later, I'm like, holy shit, I didn't see that before. So there's a lot crammed in there. I will ask you this then, before I get a specific score out of you. The movie obviously ends in a way that is very much up for interpretation. You have mentioned that you've read the novel. I'm just curious, do you have sort of a, hesitate to say specific takeaway, but if someone said, hey, Jose Youngs, what do you think the ending of Fight Club means or is about or actually is, what would your answer be?
There is technically a sequel, like an official sequel in comic book form. So I think and I've read both of them, like the 2 and 3. So I think for a long time, I think it ended, and it's the only reliable aspect of the movie is the ending, because now, like, once you get past the Tyler Durden and the split personality aspect of it, and the narrator like allegedly kind of regains control of his own actions, we kind of see it unfolding. And it's strange to say the only part of the movie that I can say actually happened is the ending. At the time, I didn't appreciate that. I just thought it was a cool ending.
Sure.
And then as I grew up, I'm like, wow, this really is unique. Like, this is a really, really true, unique thing that we just witnessed.
Well, and I love that I'm going to pretend like I knew you had an intimate knowledge of the source material when I booked you, and that this wasn't just a happy accident. But no, I really appreciate that. Do you remember off the top of your head the publisher of those comics, in case anybody's interested in checking out the extended media, as it
It
were?
is luckily it is written by Chuck Palahniuk, the guy who wrote the original one. So it's not like someone just kind of took his IP and ran with it. So I would absolutely say it is canon. It's not a fan fiction or anything. And
Right.
it is Dark Horse Comics.
Oh, awesome.
The same people that did Hellboy and everything. Very unique. A lot of the characters come back. The narrator's obviously back. A little bit. I'm not a big fan. I don't like giving like the character gets a name.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like it's a little too on the nose for me, but I would recommend it. I think it's good to get the entire story. It makes you appreciate the movie a little bit more.
No, I love it. And Dark Horse has a great reputation for like
Absolutely.
appealing expanded material. I mean, for decades they handled the Star Wars extended cut
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, was excited to hear that answer to the question. Well, all of that said, because I do want to get into all the other aspects of this film. 1 out of 10, what would you give the plot of Fight Club? He's shadowboxing everyone.
I would give it a solid 8. I really would, because it's a plot. Maybe it's not the best plot, or maybe I'm looking at this as like other people have done it since then, and maybe they've done it better. But they're really one of the first ones. Like Fight Club, like this, is really one of the better ones to pull off something like this. And I think maybe I say it's not a perfect. It's not. I wouldn't definitely give it not a 10. I don't think I'd give it a 9, but a 7 or 8 I think is on the money. It's a plot that even if you don't like Fight Club, you will remember it. And even if you haven't seen Fight Club, you've heard the phrase, you know, the first rule of Fight Club, and you know who Tyler Durden is. So anytime you can get characters or lines from a movie to kind of ingrain themselves in the history of cinema, they have to be doing something right. You might hate the movie, but you will remember this plot for the rest of your life.
That brings us on to characters and performances. I do want to just ask you first out of the gate your general thoughts on the characters and performances. Maybe we just start out by asking one of the most poignant questions in cinema, in any cinema conversation. What did you think of Meatloaf's performance?
I didn't know who Meatloaf was the first time I saw this.
Which makes sense, yeah.
I didn't know who, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if I found out that that was Meatloaf like later in life. Like upon like maybe I rewatched it when I was like 19. I was like, oh, that's Meatloaf. I never realized that. Him and like honestly, Jared Leto, stellar performances. What is it? Angel Face was his name.
That's right.
Yeah.
Angel Face. And I don't mind saying maybe my favorite Jared Leto performance.
Just getting his face punched in.
Yeah, it's really easy to watch. I grew up in a cave where Bat Outta Hell was played all the time. So I knew who Meatloaf was and had no idea probably for about 15 years after I saw Fight Club that Meatloaf was in it. So I think I was more concerned with his chest than his face, but not in the way that probably sounds. Well, I'll ask you this thing, because I said there's something I want to present. So this is obviously a split personality movie. Dare I say, the first time you watch it, kind of like The Sixth Sense, there's a bit of a twist, but the twist for most people is maybe even known going in. I would submit that I actually think this personality is split into 3 parts. And I really watched it through this lens, and I am a firm believer that Marla Singer also is not real. I firmly believe, and I mentioned it in my open, in the cheekiest of ways, that Tyler Durden is in this sort of red herring colored leather jacket. And the reason I said that was because I believe he represents the sort of hypermasculine or the ego, whereas Marla Singer represents the hyperfeminine. And even when we get to the end of the movie and the narrator has effectively, for lack of a better term, killed the hyper masculine, the ego, he is then hand in hand with the hyper feminine. And I saw that as finally being full and whole as a character, because he had sort of settled, he had accepted this half. Am I crazy? Does that work at all? And I don't know, what are your general thoughts on that take?
It's hard to answer reading more. Like if you read the sequels.
Fair enough. Okay.
But I will say I've heard this theory a few times. And at first, I'm like, no, that's stupid. And then you start to watch it more, and you rewatch it, like you said, with that notion. 100% see where anyone is coming from, and I will not argue that she is a fictional person and kind of conjured up by the narrator. Do you want me to say what happens in the sequel at all? Like the alleged this sequel comment?
I would like to know, but I'll offer this again just for people who are maybe playing along at home. I think that because there's really only two pieces of evidence, at least within the film, where she interacts with people not named Tyler or
Yeah.
narrator. One of them is when she orders at the table, but
Yep.
in this instance, again, we see Tyler exclusively interacting with people who take orders from him. And at that point in the film, are all speaking in these sort of backwards. They don't understand. They know he's kind of crazy. They know he's playing Tess. So I could very easily see him ordering for a fake woman and them just playing right along with it. And then at the end, even when they kind of drag her in, I would submit that you could kind of easily believe that all of those people are just figments of his imagination at that point, for the sake of that. But regardless, I will put that fan theory to bed for the sake of the expanded media. Yes, please, Jose, let me know. I'm assuming maybe she pops up and she gives like a Citizen Kane style speech, and maybe we.
Well, in the movie too, does she not almost get hit by a car?
Well,
Like they honk at her?
she does, but at that point he's in traffic with her, and he's stopping a bus. So that was one of the scenes in particular, and I was wondering, well, why would the bus not drive off if he wasn't on it? But the whole time he's telling the driver in the car not to go, so I could see
True.
the bus driver thinking, oh, he's getting on, and in theory he also had a huge wad of cash out. So I could also see the bus driver thinking, what is happening? This guy potentially has hundreds of dollars in cash he's offering me. So I don't know. Again, a thin theory perhaps, but
So
yeah.
In the sequel, the narrator, I think it takes place 10 years after the movie, and Marla and the narrator are married, and they have a kid. And the kid starts to see Tyler too, which is why I'm like, okay, like, are we just redoing the movie with a kid now? But then at the same time, like I have a very close friend who reads comic books too, and but we kind of talked about this a couple of years ago when the comics were first kind of hitting. I think it was like actually 10 years ago, comic books were coming out, and he was very adamant that Marla was fake, and I'm like, how can you say that now? And I'm like, do you trust the narrator? I'm like, fair. Like the movie, like we see them, we've already proven that the narrator is famously unreliable narrator, as I said. So I don't think we will get an answer. I also don't think there is a wrong answer. I think it is absolutely what you make of it. I see both sides. I think she is real. You would say she is not real, and I would say neither of us are wrong.
Hey, I think that's a great way to do it. And as an unreliable host, I'm going to do what I get to do, which is like present you with something and then go right into a segue so you can't respond. So as someone who has not read that comic, I would say maybe if his pregnant wife is made up and his made up child is seeing his made up friend, maybe that's proof, Jose, they're all made up. Again, I say that as a guy who hasn't even read the thing, so call me Dunning-Kruger. Anyway, let me get a score out of you before we get into the visual storytelling. 1 out of 10 for characters and performances. It is a hybrid, so you got to give some love again to Meatloaf and Jared Leto, in addition to whoever those other people were in this movie.
In terms of how memorable they are to the history of cinema, they have to be a 10. If you were to put together a list of the like 10 most memorable like cinematic characters of all time, and I'm not saying, when I say memorable, I'm not saying best.
Sure, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Is it Michael Corleone a better character than Tyler Durden? 1,000%. Do more people know who Tyler Durden is than Michael Corleone? I would say very confidently yes. I won't argue if you say Tyler Durden is one of the 5 most infamous characters ever put on a movie. Like Darth Vader has to be up there, Indiana Jones, Tyler Durden, like he is in that realm. of a cult icon.
I would just say that's evidenced by the fact that if you ask most people what's Brad Pitt's most famous role, how do you argue
How do
what
you argue it's not Tyler?
if you remove that from his catalog, I feel like he has a different
I agree.
last 26 years. I mean, it is such a pivotal role. Yeah.
I think you also like, I know you said it tongue in cheek that like after seeing like Fight Club causes more gyms memberships than, but like it's true. Like
It is true.
I do not remember who said it, but it was an actor, not a famous A-lister, but he's in a 1,000 show movies. You'll have seen him 1,000 times. And he said that the second time that Brad Pitt took his shirt off in Fight Club, movie history changed. Like that is what an A-lister has to look like now.
And we see today with I think it was Paul Rudd who said, it's easy to get ready for a Marvel movie. You just don't have any fun for, a year and a half. And, you can look like that. So for better or worse, it has become a standard. And it's interesting that we're talking about this because now we're talking about visual storytelling. And that's clearly a very distinct visual part of the film. I guess I'm just curious, when you kind of close your eyes and you think of Fight Club, so many things can pop into your mind, from a pink bar soap to a chiseled Brad Pitt. I'm curious, what are some of the visual stylings that sort of stand out to you and stay with you after all these years?
The scenes where the narrator doesn't know if he's dreaming or not, this movie really does feel like it's a bunch of splash pages, like a double page splash.
Yeah.
It seems like that the scenes that stand out for me are the ones where the narrator seems to have like these trippy visions, like the first time he sleeps with Marla. It's like, did that happen or not? Or the scene where he first hangs out with Tyler and he asks Tyler to punch him. The famous one, right? Those are the ones that stand out. And then someone once asked me, I did another podcast and it wasn't a movie related, but one of the questions they asked me goes, what scene in movie history do you think you've rewatched the most, whether on YouTube or you rented it and you like rewound it a bunch? And I struggled to answer that because
that's a hard question.
And I said like, I think the end of Fight Club, from the time he gets off the elevator to the explosions at the end and the "Where's my mind," might be number one. I don't know if it is, but I think I've seen that scene more than that, because it's I think it just like character acting, great, script, great, the camera cuts and the cinematography, great, the music, great. I'm not saying it's a perfect like amalgamation of things, but that scene is, I find myself thinking about that scene quite a bit over time, and not because it relates to me, but I'm just thinking of it. It's just such an awesome scene to rewatch. And I remember watching it on, like, I'm going to date myself right now, but I had the first ever like iPod video that was like tiny. It was like a square. And I had two movies on it. I had Anchorman and Fight Club. Watching Fight Club like on a tiny screen, I'd be like, man, this would have been so cool to see in a giant theater with like the explosions going off. So I think the ending scene, not just in this movie, but in all cinema, has stuck with me quite a bit.
Talk about sticking the landing. Like, the ending is just cool and stylized. And as much as, we could go on and on about various movies that have great beginnings and great thesis statements that really set up what the rest of the film is going to be, Fight Club really does have this style and is on the back end of over, 2 hours of just nonstop, like, super stylish action and thought-provoking imagery from one of the most thought-provoking filmmakers who really does have such a unique style. I don't know, there's just a rhythm that almost the CGI fits into. Like, it just kind of feels stylized in a certain way as opposed to dated.
Personally, I think we can point to the first Jurassic Park, where that set the tone for what movies are moving forward. From that point on, what can top that? And I'm not saying Fight Club and Jurassic Park even remotely
Sure.
but this came out the same year as The Matrix. I feel like they spent all of their CGI budget at the end. I love seeing movies like that where you could be like, oh, I know where all of their budget went. It was for this one moment. I think it was understated CGI too. I really appreciate it. I also really appreciated whoever did the makeup for like the bruising and everything. Edward Norton said that it was like him and Brad Pitt made a decision that like Edward Norton was going to stop eating and Brad Pitt was going to work out more and go to the tanning salon more. Though as Edward Norton wasted away, Brad Pitt and Tyler like looked more appealing, those types of decisions. And then I think if there was a lot more CGI throughout the movie, the finale would not hit as hard. And it punches you when it happens, because you can be like, wow, this is not just a guy in front of a camera. This is like Zodiac or Gone Girl.
Before I get a score out of you, I do have to ask, because you did see this in your youth, have you ever walked into an empty apartment and scanned it and not just kind of seeing an IKEA catalog popping up in your mind?
Honestly, because I live in Manhattan and there's a new IKEA like thing in Union Square. And me and my girlfriend were walking by it the other day and I was like, this is so bizarre that I'm about to a Fight Club podcast and there's this new IKEA thing, because I think like Tyler and this, you might hate this plot, you might hate this movie, but you can't, like if you've seen this movie, you can't look in an IKEA catalog one way again. You can't order a set of furniture online ever again. You can't see a red leather jacket ever again. Maybe you could think of Akira, the animated movie, but like it's for the majority of Americans, it's going to be Tyler. Oh, yeah. If you see a guy with spiky hair, you may go, "Oh, you're trying to be Tyler Durden." Like, it just sticks with you.
No, I completely agree, and I have a feeling based on that, I know what you're going to give the visual storytelling 1 out of 10.
10.
That is what I thought.
10. For me personally, 10. It's not the best, but in terms of like how memorable things are, like some of my personal favorite scenes. And shout out to whoever, because I know you've probably seen it, but like the people who make those YouTube videos where they edit out Tyler from the scenes.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, see, this is a movie that just keeps on giving. Like it's made a whole niche audience of a dude just talking to himself on the movie.
Totally agree. In that time period, there were so many great filmmakers making those types of movies where you can keep going back to and that have just aged so well. And one of the things that I don't know, I want to ask that again maybe hasn't aged so well is well, at least the music in Fight Club. The use of sound, I think, is phenomenal. I mean, the sound design, the Foley, everything is really immersive, and it's sometimes like the most visceral part of the movie. But in terms of the actual music, I remember watching it this time. It was maybe the first time I was ever really saw like the opening title sequence and was kind of distracted by it. I was like, I don't really remember this being, again, this sort of very, what I would call like 2000s, even though this is 99, felt like a Spider-Man movie, like a Sam Raimi. So I had kind of forgotten about, which felt a little bit weird, and save for obviously the iconic use of music at the very end. Throughout the film, again, just kind of almost sounds like DVD menu music at some points, just this kind of like, man, not really, I don't know. So
very dated.
Yeah, I'm curious, just your general thoughts on the use of sound, maybe building off of that.
Of everything that this movie has done, it's like kind of at the bottom. Like you said, if you just listen to it, you could go like, oh, like if for whatever reason you listen to the movie of Fight Club, you'll be like, this movie was very clearly made in the late 90s with just the music. And I had read ages ago that Fincher's first choice was to get Tom York to do the music.
Okay.
But OK Computer had just come out and he's like, I can't right now. I just created maybe the greatest album ever. And
sorry, I'm a little busy.
With changing the trajectory of my own craft. So then I think he just made like basic like breakbeat out like things. It's fine. But again, it just dates the movie. Outside of the Where's My Mind by the Pixies,
right?
It's a nothing burger to me. I can live it or I can live without it.
I feel like maybe the benefit of that is there's so much going on visually. There's so much going on with the story and the characters and performances. Maybe having that understated music really kind of helps everything else be a bit more palatable. Hard to say. We don't know. We only have the soundtrack that we've got. But I guess I'll just ask you then, 1 out of 10. What do you give the use of sound overall?
4, 3. Not that it's bad. It's just when I think of Fight Club, I'm not thinking of the score. It gets the job done. It is nothing I will ever go back to.
Fair enough. I have a 3.5 locked in because you said a 3 or 4. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. I was going to ask you what that would translate to on like the 10-point must system, but I don't think we can break that. We'll go with a scoring system that works, if you get my joke. That's the show. But
Shots fired.
that's
Fired.
right. As a cartoon lion, it's what I do best. That brings us to theme. I think it's obvious. It's most obviously that it comes with these sort of, like I said, anti-corporate, anti-capitalism, but it is very much grounded in a sense of self and a sense of self-awareness and growing and journey. I have a couple more themes, but I'm just curious if maybe there were one or two that resonated most with you. What would you identify?
Consumerism, consumerist culture, mixed with a coming of age story, mixed with a reaction to trauma.
Yeah.
Kind of all wrapped in a bow. And then obviously, you have like fascism and all that kind of stuff that I'm sure like the film critics and like I live down the street from NYU, and I bet everyone that goes there is going to be like, oh, this is a fascist, like fighting fascism. I'm just like, fine. Like, I won't argue with that, but you're being annoying. Like, you can just watch a cool action film with like a kind of retro noir feel to it. But the three things I mentioned, coming of age, The Graduate, I feel would be like kind of the antithesis of like the same coming of age story, but like not as like he's settling down,
Sure.
and the narrator's like coming of age for like the people of like the everyman in their 30s that goes through a midlife crisis at a way too young of age. And to kind of put that bow on that, like The Graduate ends with the male and female like staring blankly into the screen, and Fight Club ends with the male and female with their backs facing the audience. It's two sides of the same coin, I think.
No, that's a really awesome comparison. I really love that. When it comes to the themes, what was interesting to me when I was watching it this time, and largely as I mentioned earlier, because I was kind of watching it through this lens of like, who would have, Hella Bonham-Carter's character is just a part of the narrator. And so what I thought was interesting and what kind of stood out to me more this time when watching it is when she spoke, she references sexual abuse a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And so it did start to make me think that if she is an extension of the narrator, and if we're to believe that the narrator was potentially abused when he was younger, that would sort of explain, especially if the narrator was abused by a male, that might start to explain this repression of the Tyler character, the repression that then sort of leads him to clearly being successful enough, like with his job, but then the resentment that we begin at the movie that that's bubbling up within him, where he just kind of sees how normal he is in this. And I think something that, again, is a very much a part of life when you're transitioning into your 30s, when you're transitioning into your 40s. And so I just bring all this back because I love that point you make about The Graduate, where that's very much about a younger man and kind of experiencing these life as a man through the first time and what that means and the responsibilities of that. But in this movie, we have somebody who is already a man, a fully formed adult, and is sort of resenting what he's achieved because of, at least we know that Tyler is a repressed version of that. And so I bring this all up under theme because those are things that I was really thinking about this time. And this idea, you said trauma, and that really stood out to me as, yeah, I never really remembered before that she had mentioned that kind of as consistently. And if they were linked, what that would mean for, again, these repressed characters and what that ultimately means for the end when he's holding her in hand. And what I took that to mean is this sort of embracing of that trauma and kind of taking control and ultimately literally looking out onto this huge, your destruction you've caused, and sort of ultimately taking responsibility for things.
I feel like that Generation X, like ours, and like as the narrators, is really kind of the middle child of history. It's the baby boomers that kind of like, for better or for worse, like kind of like society is still feeling the effects of them. And then we were in the middle, and now this Gen Z millennial is kind of like
Running Wild.
Running Wild, and like Gen X is like stuck where they lived through like the 70s, 80s or whatever, and then they were a little they were kind of maybe in their 50s or something when the internet and technology kind of got to where it is now.
Right.
So their life was advertisements and mailing order furniture, catalogs, and this movie very much feels like it sums up Gen X angst.
I agree with you, and you'll know that when I give you my score. But on that note, then, what do you give it 1 out of 10?
For the themes,
Yes, sir.
high. And I'm not saying a 10. Oh, like 7 or 8, I think, probably. I think a lot of people are trying to catch these things. Like when you talked about like the sexual abuse aspect of it that Marla brought up and the suppression of Tyler Durden. I had not put that together for this one because Marla was never really one of the characters I think about too often, but so I'm kind of rethinking themes now. So, but it's 7 or an 8 probably. And there are certainly better themes, but I think the way that this is kind of ambiguous is very unique in the way that it presented. Because, like I said, the first time I watched it, never picked up on any of this. And then every time I rewatch it, like I'm going to rewatch it again now, and I'll look at Marla a lot more because I've never done that. So yeah, wow, that's great. So probably a 7 or 8 for me.
All right.
There.
I'm locking in the 7.5,
Yeah.
the average there. That means we have a total. We have a total score. So I'm going to run it back, and I'm going to reveal your score to you now. You gave the plot an 8, the characters and performances a 10, the visual storytelling a 10, the use of sound 3.5, and the theme a 7.5 for a total of 78. So here, that's a B plus. You could bump it up.
That's apt. I think that's apt.
Let me lock it in here, the B plus.
I think that's apt. I think when I was a kid, I thought it was an A plus because I was an angsty kid. And anything that's like counterculture, you're like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. But like, is this even the best movie of 1999? You know?
Yeah.
Or like, it's not Frank came out?
That is the year that The Phantom Menace was released. So
Greatest movie ever.
Exactly. Pretty difficult.
But like Magnolia came out that year, Being John Malkovich, The Matrix, like.
Is Memento that year or is that 2001?
Ooh, that is 2000 next year. I think Fight Club is the perfect definition of a cult classic where it did not win. You're not talking about the amount of Golden Globes it won.
No.
You're not talking about, this is I don't know what the box office was.
So
I bet it.
I was just going to say, because I was going to bring that up earlier, it did not do shockingly well on a budget. Yeah.
This seems like a movie that would crush it at Blockbuster rentals. This is a movie that probably made most of its money on rentals than actual ticket sales.
Totally agree. This is a DVD movie. This is a movie that had an estimated budget of $63 million. Domestically, meaning here in North America, it only brought in $37 million, although worldwide it did bring over just a little over $100 million. So it did make its money back, or at least depending on what you believe about advertising budgets and whatnot. But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I was shocked when I saw that it only made $37 million domestically because, again, this movie, everybody I knew saw this movie, but come to think of it, I didn't see it in theaters. I don't know anybody else who saw it in theaters. So that said, I will reveal my score now. To your 8, I gave the plot a 9. Characters and performances, you and I totally agreed. I gave it a 10 to your 10. Visual storytelling, I did give it a 9 to your 10 because I did, like I said, I do question and do believe as time continues to go on, some of these visuals won't age as well. And like I mentioned, I think it lives in a nice stylistic realm for that. Whereas a movie, again, like Panic Room, not so much. Visuals just age like milk. Anyway, I gave it a 9. Use of sound, I was a little more kind. I gave it a 7 to your 3.5. That's probably where we have our biggest discrepancy. I feel like it does what it needs to do, but it is forgettable with the exception of the last scene there. And then finally for theme, believe it or not, I actually did give it a 10 out of 10 because I do think this movie really does represent a discussion, an internal discussion we have to have and or we should have, and also a discussion that you can have with other people. And I think it's a movie you can watch again and again and again. I think it's going to mean different things to you at different points in your life. I agree. I don't think it's perfect, but I do think its strongest points are absolutely its themes and its characters / performances, which I think are on par. So I gave it a 90 to your 78. I give it an A. I think it's an A movie. And I would note largely, again, the performances and themes for that. But Jose, it was wonderful having you here in the jungle. I'm glad we didn't punch each other or anything like that. That was something I was worried about. I was like, we might have to prove something, and I'm glad we didn't have to do that. Regardless, I'm a big fan of your work over on MMAfighting.com, as well as your social media channels. I'm curious, where could the listeners find you if you wanted to let them know?
You can find me at Jose Youngs, JOSEYOUNGS, on all of your social platforms, or at MMA Fighting across every platform. That's pretty much where you can reach me at all times. So most of my messages revolve around comic books and fist fighting. So if you're into either of those, I'm your guy. Or if you just want to talk about movies, because I do love me a movie.
I wanted to put you on the spot and ask you, do you have a favorite movie?
Easy. Princess Mononoke by Hayao Miyazaki has been my favorite movie since the moment I saw it in theaters with a billet. I can give you my 5 favorite movies.
Please.
Princess Mononoke is number 1 with a bullet. And then 2 through 5, no specific order. Okay. It is Kung Fu Hustle. I think it's the funniest movie I've ever seen in my entire life.
It's really good.
Children of Men.
Wow,
I think is one of the single most underappreciated movie in the history of cinema.
It's a beautiful film.
Had the misfortune of coming out on Christmas Day. Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, love it.
And Surf Ninjas.
Okay. Often, usually when someone says Blade Runner 2049, I go, oh boy, here comes Surf Ninjas, and here we are.
Yes. Those are the 5 movies I think I will watch forever for the rest of my life and never get bored of them.
Wow, amazing. I love it. This is like our own version of the Criterion Closet. I just wanted 1, you delivered 5. This is why I call Jose Youngs, because you over-deliver every time. Well, you guys know where to find him now. Again, Jose, I really appreciate you coming by. Would you come back sometime? Maybe we do a Miyazaki episode.
I mean, if you're going to do a Miyazaki episode, just pencil me in, man. And set aside like 2 hours.
Done. All right. Well, thank you for coming. And before you leave, make sure you take one of our complimentary bars of soap.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. And here's a look at the scoreboard from our show. Dancer Emily Poley scored Black Swan a 78 and a B+ to my 95 and an A, making it the highest scored film on today's show with an 86.5 A average. Jimmy the Toucan scored Me, Myself, and Irene a 76 and a B+ to my 71 and a B, giving it a 73.5 B average. And Jose Young gave Fight Club a 78 and a B+ to my 90 and an A for an 84 and an A average. Please tell me what you graded each film in the comments, as I genuinely want to know. A big thank you to the beautiful and talented Emily Poley for visiting the jungle. I'm always thankful when Jimmy flies in to chat a movie, and I'm so happy Jose Young came by to talk Fight Club. Next time, join us on episode 22, Baseball Movies. My good friend and gaffer, John Champion, debuted to score Moneyball. Lila the Sugar Glider is back to talk The Sandlot, and from Post Wrestling, W.H. Park returns to review Field of Dreams. Thanks again to the team at Real Digital for producing this episode, and Platinum Plastic, who supplies our show's merchandise over on Redbubble.com. If you haven't left a like by now, you might as well, and subscribe to the channel as well as hit the bell icon to be notified when Real Talk drops each week. Let us know in the comments which was your favorite film. Thanks for listening, and if you're gonna talk movies, make sure it's Real Talk.
Thank you. I hadn't laughed like that in a long time.